Welcome back, everyone, to another segment of Rabbi Jeff's Pirkei Avos, where we attempt to understand the meaning behind the instructions of our sages and how it's relevant to our lives today. We do this, of course, using the thoughts of our teachers before us and try to make them applicable to our times. Feel free, please, to contact me with any comments or questions at rjfromlj@aol.com. Today's Mishnah is chapter 1, Mishnah 14, Pirkei Avos, Mishnah Yudalid. It's the end of Hillel's trilogy of peace Mishnayos, and of his position paper, really, of a description of who he was and what he dedicated his life to, and what he was encouraging other people to dedicate their lives to. So in today's Mishnah, the Mishnah says, and it's like I mentioned yesterday, one of the most famous Mishnayos in Pirkei Avos, that the Mishnah says, Hu Yomer, he used to say, continuing on with Hillel's dictum, Im ein ani li mili. If I'm not for myself, then who's going to be for me? Ukishani la'atzmi, and when I am only for myself, then mo'ani, what am I? V'im lo achshav emasai. And if not now, when? Don't procrastinate. So the questions, I think, on the Mishnayos are obvious. The first question is that what's the connective tissue between 1 and 2 is pretty easy, but between 1, 2, and 3, what is this business about imlo achshav emasai, that if not now, when? So then why is procrastination in this Mishnah? This Mishnah is really about not being selfish, about thinking about other people, about also worrying about numero uno. Why do you need to add on don't procrastinate? Like I mentioned yesterday, don't procrastinate is a message that could be appended to any Mishnah. If not now, when? Why are we putting it in over here specifically? That's problem number 1. Problem number 2 is that what's he really trying to teach me? What's the full theme of the Mishnah? Is there in fact one theme of the Mishnah? And what is this adding to what we already know about what Hillel taught us? Hillel taught us in the first Mishnah that we have to be like the students of Aaron, we have to love peace and pursue peace. He taught us in the second Mishnah that negid shma, avad shma, right, that if you're into self-aggrandizement, it's not going to be okay, and all the way we explained that. Then what is he adding now onto this when he says, Imenani li mili, what's being added on into this theme of love and peace and worrying about other people? What is being added onto this? And then, as a final question, not really from the text, but there's a statement in the Talmud in Sukkah that says that when on the Simchas Beis Shoeva on Sukkot, when they would make this big party in the temple, and they would celebrate the drawing of the water ceremony, so it says that Hillel would come into the party, and Hillel had a special song that he would sing when he would come into the party, and his song was "Taran taran tan tan imani kan." Hakol kan, he would sing. If I'm here, everybody's here. Now, if you ask me for one statement that, like let's do a Sesame Street on this, like which of these don't fit with the others, right? This does not fit with the rest of the things that are being said here. Right? With Imen ani li mili, if I'm not for me, then who's going to be for me? Kishani la'atzmi mo'ani, and then imani kan hakol kan, if I'm here, everybody's here. Ich bin du, yeah, I'm here. I'm an epis, I'm here. Like, what is he saying? Can you imagine the scene in the temple? All the great rabbis are there. The entire Jewish people is gathered in the courtyard of the temple, and they're celebrating, they're singing, and they're dancing. And in walks Hillel, and he announces, Imani kan hakol kan. If I'm here, then everybody's here. Like, it just doesn't fit. There's something wrong. What was Hillel saying in that dictum, Imani kan hakol kan? Okay. So I'm hoping I can again get through all of this today, but let's take a look at some very important things. The first thing is, let's define who are we. So we are not what we do. We've spoken about that. We understand that. We are not what we do. We are what we are. The famous story, They say it about the Kotzker. They say about many people. Once talking to a group of children, say, "What do you do?" So, what do you want to be when you grow up? So, a child says, "I want to be a doctor. I want to be a lawyer." And he turns to the kids and he says, "I didn't ask you what you want to do. I asked you what you want to be." We find this also by Rivka, that it says Rivka Oheves. She loves Yaakov. And it says by Yitzchak, it says that he loved Esav because of what Esav did for him. The Yitzchak loved Esav because of a thing. Rivka loved Yaakov because of who he was. That kind of love endures. We are unquestionably what we are, not what we do. We are not our professions. As we spoke the other day, we're not meant to find our satisfaction and meaning and definition of life based on our professions. We are who we are as human beings. We are who we are as people, as mentioned. All of that is beautiful. But at the end of the day, what are we really? So we look at our talents. Let's say a person has a chazan, beautiful voice. So a person says, "Who am I?" I'm a chazan. I'm a person that can sing. That's not who you are. That was the gift that you were given by God. Person is even a wealthy person. This person says, "Who am I?" I'm a wealthy person. You're not a wealthy person. You're a person who's been given a talent from God. You've been given a gift. Person's a good tennis player. So you're not a tennis player. The tennis playing, the ability, the sportsmanship, the ability to be able to move yourself, that's a gift from God. That's not you. You are what you do with those gifts that you were given by God. You're given an ability to be able to, you're given a certain wisdom, a certain knowledge and understanding. What you do with that, that's who you are. And that is what defines you. What defines you is what you do with the potential, with the talents that you've been given. How do you develop those talents? How do you develop that when you recognize who you are? You recognize the talents you've been given and therefore understand that you need to do something with them. How do you develop them? How do you grow them? So it's only going to come from you. You have to be motivated. You have to realize that ultimately the motivation has got to come from me. It's got to come from within. Nobody else is going to push me. Nobody else is going to make me who I am. Okay, so when we're young, so then, our mothers and fathers encourage us and they push us along. But at the end of the day, they can only push us to a certain place. The rest of what we do, the rest of what we accomplish has got to come from inside of us. When a person has no sense of self, no definition of self, so then they're always looking to the outside to motivate them. Tell me how great I am. Tell me how good I am. You tell me from the outside, and then I'll be able to push myself. Hillel comes along and he says, step number one you need to know, im ein ani li, mi li. If I don't develop my talents, if I don't develop myself, if I don't build myself and do this for myself, nobody else is going to push me. Nobody's going to light my spark. Nobody is going to make me into who I am. Motivation has to come from inside of myself. Beautiful. Now I can speak for the next hour about that concept, about how motivation has to come from inside yourself. I would sound like, like one of these motivating speakers. Great, it's wonderful, but it's much deeper than that. Because the question that we have to ask ourselves, and that Hillel is really forcing us to ask, as we're going to see, is how do we motivate ourselves? Great. Tell me I have to motivate myself. Speak to me for an hour about how it's got to come from within. Shkoyach. Thank you, but you have done nothing for me. Because how do I motivate myself? And for that, I don't need an hour. For that, I need one sentence. Understand how important it is what you need to do. Because when you understand that something is valuable, critical, important, you have the energy to motivate yourself. You have the ability to be able to push yourself, because every human being understands that when something is important, it needs to get done. Always when I speak about this concept, I always give a mashal. And I say, you imagine, you talk to a teenager. You say to a teenager that you're going to wake them up at 3 o'clock in the morning. You're going to collect them. You're going to bring them to the Beis Medrash. You're going to learn with them. You're going to give them a good breakfast. And then you're going to learn more with them. And they will look at you like you are from another planet. They'll tell you, sounds like a great idea. Do me a favor. Let me know how it worked out. You tell a teenager, I'm waking you up at 3 o'clock in the morning. I'm going to pick you up and we're going skiing. We're going to ski a whole day long and then we're going to drive home 6 hours. And they'll say, no problem. Can you pick me up at 2? And at 2, they're going to be standing there waiting by the door. Whoa, you were late. What's the matter with you? Because when something is valuable and important, we have the ability to be able to overcome anything and to do and accomplish anything. Procrastination has nothing to do with poor planning and time management. Procrastination has to do with a lack of understanding that something is important. When we set up a list of things to do, and we do number 1, and we do number 3, and we do number 7, but we can't get ourselves to do number 2 or number 4, it's because we don't understand the value. Not that we just don't like it. We don't understand their value, because if we understood their value, we really understood their value, then we would have motivation to do it. Shlomo Melech speaks about laziness. And it's incredible to learn this in Mishlei. Shlomo Melech says that a riba derech, that there is a lazy person is a person, an ish otzel is a person that says that there's a lion in the road. So it always intrigued me. A lazy person says there's a lion in the road. Well, if there is a lion in the road, then the lazy person is not lazy. He's actually very prudent and wise. Because if there's a lion in the road, I would not suggest going outside. And if there's no lion in the road, then this is not a lazy person. This is a delusional person, and there's something wrong with him much deeper than the fact that he might be a little lazy. It's got nothing to do with atzlus, with laziness. So why does Shlomo Melech use as an example of what's an ish otzel? A person that looks out and says there's a lion in the road. Because there is no question. He's talking about a case where there's a lion in the road. And ish otzel looks at it and says, Baruch Hashem, I didn't really want to go anyway, and thank God, now I've got a good excuse. How come you didn't show up? There was a lion in the road. No problem. But the person who's not an otzel looks at it and says, there's a lion in the road, but the lion is in the front of the house. I could go out the back door. I could get a helicopter to pick me up. I could do whatever it is, but the person who's not the lazy person, the person of energy, who knows that what they have to do is critical, will find the energy to be able to do what they need to do. Nothing can stand in the way of a person. We have a statement which actually is not a statement from Chazal, but it is nevertheless a very important statement. Ein davar omid b'fnei haratzon. It is not a Chazal, but there's nothing that stands in front of the will of a person. And the reason is when we understand that doing this particular thing is critical, that's when we have the energy to be able to do it. The Torah tells us, Ushmartem es hamatzos, that you have to guard the matzah. So Rashi there quotes a chazal that says, Ushmartem es hamitzvos, because the word matzot and the word mitzvot is the same letters. What a cute thing, Ushmartem es hamitzvos. Why? What was wrong with Ushmartem es hamatzos? What was wrong with just guarding the matzah? And that's what teaches me the mitzvah of shmur matzah, that you have matzah that didn't come in contact with water and all of that. Why did you need to turn that into a general thing that the Torah is telling us? Not only do you have to guard the matzahs, but guard the mitzvahs. And then the Chazal continue and say that mitzvah baliyotcha, when a mitzvah comes to your hands, al tach mitzena, don't let it become chametz. In other words, don't let it spoil. Great idea again, but why teach it to me here when you're telling me about matzah? You're telling me about leaving Mitzrayim. Why would you embed in that the mitzvah of this concept of mitzvah baliyotcha? When an opportunity comes to your hand, don't procrastinate. Don't lose that opportunity. The whole night of Pesach is characterized by one word called chipazon. The whole experience of leaving Mitzrayim was all about speed, alacrity, all about running out of Mitzrayim. Everything that we do, even the way we make matzos in 18 minutes. We do it all very, very fast. It's all about speed. Speed very often comes when you feel that something is important. It picks up the speed. When you hear a person talking fast, right, and they're just shooting things out, it's very often because they're excited about it, because they feel what they're saying, what they're doing is something very, very important. On Pesach night, when we left Mitzrayim, we were told that we had to leave with our belts on, our clothes on, as if we had one foot out the door. Again, to encourage us to feel this sense of importance, this sense of value. When a person has a great thing happen to them, they have to bring what's called a korban toda. A korban toda is a Thanksgiving offering. The Thanksgiving offering had to be brought with 40 loaves of bread. I don't care how much you like bread, you ain't downing 40 loaves of bread. With the amount of meat from two sides of a goat, you ain't doing it. The only way you could have done it is if you invited a lot of people. And even if you invited a lot of people, even if they're fressers, you're gonna have to light a fire under them, because they only have one day to eat it. They don't have 2 days like a normal peace offering. So what's going to happen? There's going to be this energy that's there. And they're going to ask you, how come we're here? Oh, and you're going to tell them, because God did this to me, big miracle. And you're going to feel this sense of importance of the moment. And that importance of the moment is going to give everyone the energy and the speed to be able to do what they have to do. Because when we feel things are important, we have energy to be able to accomplish them. Ushmartem es hamatzos. Guard the matzos. Why are you guarding the matzos? Because it's critical. It's important. You know what? Now you're open to hear this. Let me tell you, shmartem es hamitzos. Apply this to everything you do. When you have a value in front of you, when you think that something is important, you will have the energy to do it. If you're not motivated to do something, before you go spend money on a psychologist, ask yourself, why don't you think that this is important? Oh, of course I think it's important. No, you don't. Because if you did, you'd have the energy to do it. And if you don't have the energy, barring physical reasons, but if you don't have the energy to do it, you've got to check your value. You got to look at it and say, is this really something that I think is critical? And by the way, it makes a healthy person, because you look at it and you go, no, I really don't think it's critical. Okay, good. Let me take it off my list. I don't have to always to look at this thing and have it destroy me because I'm not doing it. It won't destroy me because it's just not important. Good. If it's not important, I take it off. But if it is important, then I will find the energy to be able to do it. When you see value, that's when you have energy to do something. They tell over an amazing story. I don't know if it's apocryphal or not, but the point is great. But that there was once a prisoner, an Arab prisoner, that was in prison, and he was sitting with his jailer. His jailer was obviously outside, and he was talking to his jailer, to a Jewish guy. And the guy started eating. It was on Pesach, and he was eating chametz. He said to the fella, he said, how are you able to eat chametz today? Isn't it your Passover? Yeah, he said, yeah, that doesn't really make a difference. So he looks at him and he says, we're going to win. He says, really? Like, where'd you get that from? Because I'm having a bagel? Like, where did you get that from? He says, because you don't believe in who you are and what you're protecting. We believe wholeheartedly in Israel. We believe wholeheartedly in what it is and what it is that we want. That's what gives energy, when you understand that something is valuable. Today, Yom HaZikaron is a day where we remember not only the present, but we remember the history of the Jewish people and the history of the Jewish state. We remember all of those soldiers, all of those that gave up their lives, not that gave up their lives for a piece of real estate, but that gave up their lives for things that they believe in. When you hear the stories, when you hear the stories and you meet the personalities, there was a deep belief, well, not religious necessarily, but a deep belief in the values of the land of Israel. When you have a deep belief, you have energy to be able to protect You have energy to be able to defend. You have energy to be able to do things that you wouldn't normally be able to do. You know, there's a thing running around now from the Baal Shem Tov, they're quoting other people also, but that there are 7 things that you learn from a thief, and that you can learn from everybody, but even a thief has something to teach us. So one of them is that a thief is discreet. Now, this is, by the way, a great subject of its own sheer, but you know, the things that I learned from my Ganef neighbor, right? But there's important messages to learn. The one is that he's discreet. He never talks about what he's doing, and when he does, he usually, you know, he's usually the shlamazel. The second is that he's fearless, takes risks, and that we learn how to take risks. Just watch a thief. The third is mindful of details. He crosses his I's and dots his T's if he's going to be a good thief. The fourth is that he's patient and he's willing to put effort into things. And the fifth is that he doesn't procrastinate because he believes in what he's doing. If you would ask a thief, Zogmir, you want a different job? No. What do I want a different job for? It's great. There's not such job security, I understand, but it's a great job because he believes in what he's doing. And when you believe in what you're doing, you have the energy to do anything. That's what Hillel's telling us. Im ein ani li. If you don't believe in you, then me li, who's going to believe in you? Your mother? Only up to a point. Your father? Your spouse? Only up to a point. You have to believe in what you're doing, in who you are, in the contribution that you make to this world, in the value that you have. And in ein ani li, if you're not going to motivate yourself, if you're not going to recognize your own importance, then me li, it's not going to come from externals. It's not going to come from outside. And that's what Hillel was saying to us. Hillel was saying when he walked into the party, im ani kan. If every single person here would bring themselves into this, would believe in themselves, then akol kan, then we would have a powerful entity here. We would be an incredible people. If everybody believed and motivated themselves, if everybody believed in who they were and the value that they added inside of this klal, inside of this kahal, inside of this congregation, this people called the Jewish people, so then we would have an amazingly powerful people because every single person would have an energy that would be an unstoppable energy. But if my definition of the word ani stops at my mirror, if it's only me when I say the word I, you know, when you're married and you say the word I, it's the royal I. You know, it means we. It means me and my spouse. When you have a family and you say the word I, you're not talking about yourself. You're talking about everybody behind you. You're talking about those that rely on you. Our job is to make that word I massive. That when I say the word I want, I am going to, I'm not talking about me. I'm talking about many, many other people. We try to make that I as inclusive as possible. Kishe'ani, the one that I'm trying to motivate and I'm trying to recognize the value, is only la'atzmi. It's only about me. Then ma ani, my ani, is nothing more than just gaiva and haughtiness. It's not real because it's motivated only to push myself, only to build myself. But when my understanding of my importance and value and the role that I play here is about you, it's about others, it's about I play a role and so do you, and therefore if I push myself, you can come along on my coattails. You'll also be motivated. My motivation will be infectious and will help you also. If I can get myself to that place, then that's great. Hakol kan. But if not, then mo'ani, what am I? Im loy achshov, and if not now, emasai. So I've been describing that as procrastination. And I don't think that that's what Hillel is telling us. I think the procrastination is in im enani li. If I don't understand my importance, I think what Hillel is telling us in these last words, im loy achshov emasai, that if I don't grab onto my inspiration now, then emasai, when is that going to happen? You know, we have epiphanies. We have things that happen in our lives that turn us on, that motivate us. You hear a shir like this, if you're open, and I'm not saying that has nothing to do with me, but just the ideas are like phenomenal. You take this and you say to yourself, you're right, I've that thing that I always hated doing, I've got to learn how that's important and motivate myself. Okay, geschmack. But if you don't do that now, then Amos, when's that going to happen? There are windows that open in our lives, and that we have opportunities to be able to walk through those windows. We have opportunities to be able to walk through those doors. But if we don't grab them, we lose those moments. It says that a shivcha shebiyam, the maidservant on the sea, saw a prophecy greater than the greatest prophets in the Jewish people. That is my God, and I will glorify him, was said by every person at the sea. They saw God. And yet, what do we call? We call her Shivcha Shabiyam, maidservant by the sea. If she saw a vision of God, she's not a maidservant, she's an Neviah. It's a prophetess. Why don't we call her the prophetess by the sea? Why are we referring to her as a maidservant? Because the next morning when she woke up, she did nothing to change her life. We, Klal Yisrael, did nothing to say, do you know what we just experienced? Now we need to be different. And therefore she blibed a maidservant. She stayed as a Shivcha Shebiyam. We stayed as servants on the sea. We didn't motivate. We didn't change ourselves. We didn't grab that moment and say, I've got to do something with myself. That's why the Nazir, there are two pashas in the Torah that are next to each other, the Nazir and the Sota, the suspected adulteress. And our rabbis tell us why the two pashas next to each other, because if you see a suspected adulteress die on top of the altar, then you have to become a Nazir. You have to take a vow of abstention from wine. So they ask the question, wait a second, why should the person who saw, how dramatic that is, watch a lady explode on top of the altar? Like it's scary, like anything. It's dramatic. You're going to look at that and go, hey, I ain't getting involved. And if you were involved in something, you'd say, I'm going to stop it today. Like you wouldn't have a motivation problem. When you see a person blow up because they just had an affair, you're going to be the purest. You're going to be like a nun. You're going to be the purest person in the whole world. It's the person who never saw that, who hears about it, who never saw the drama in front of their eyes. That person is the person that should become a Nazir, not the person that saw it. So our rabbis tell us a beautiful thing. The person that never saw it, it made an impression on them. If they do something about it, it'll always stay by them. The person who saw it with their eyes, if they don't change their lives at that moment, you know what's going to happen? They're going to say, oh my God, I'm a different person. I'm a different person. I'm never going to see the world the same again. Yeah, 15 minutes later, they'll be right back to where they were. Because if you don't memorialize something, you don't grab it, that moment, and do something with that moment is going to disappear, and we're going to lose that opportunity. And that's what Hillel is telling us. Hillel is telling us, Imlay Achshav, if motivation is great, you need to motivate yourself. You need to understand how important things are. Don't just do it for you. Do it for the Jewish world. Shkayach, but do it now. Because if you wait till tomorrow, it's not going to happen. The biggest enemy of the Jewish people is Machar, tomorrow. I'm going to start that tomorrow. And when you say you're going to do it tomorrow is never going to happen. Today, this moment is the moment we have to grab. Okay, I will tell you that I'm not done. I still have some things to put into this, because we need to wrap up. Why does Hillel say this here? Because the other two Mishnayos were really important. How does this fit in to the whole concept of peace, of shalom, of oev shalom v'rodev shalom, loving peace and pursuing peace and worrying about other people? And I did not spend any time on how do you achieve kishani la'atzmi mo'ani, that if I'm only worried about me, then where am I going? How do I motivate myself to recognize the importance of worrying about other people? I want to spend more time on this tomorrow. I'm going to talk about it tomorrow in the context of Yom Ha'atzmaut, believe it or not, and of the concept of the intolerance and hatred that exists amongst the Jewish people, and what Yom Ha'atzmaut should be symbolizing, and what the mood and mode of Yom Ha'atzmaut should in fact be. And we'll talk about that tomorrow.